This summer, the Edmonton Oilers have some big decisions to make, not only off the ice, but also on the ice as well when it comes to one of their top prospects down in the American Hockey League with the Bakersfield Condors, and also in the top brass, the top management. But before we get into the breakdown, make sure to subscribe here to Oilers Digest, as 92% of you have not yet subscribed to the channel. Make sure to join the ride as we get into the rest of free agency and into training camp and beyond. And also, this video is brought to you by Reynolds.ca, who are proud supporters of Team Canada. While they've been supporting our national team defend their home court heading into the Olympics, they've also been helping thousands of Canadians find their home court all across the country. Whether you're in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, Halifax, Mississauga, Edmonton, Victoria, St. John's, from coast to coast, Reynolds.ca have a ton of options to find the perfect place and price for you. Their website is clean and easy to use, and you can pinpoint exactly on the map where you want to move, finding all the options in your area. Find your home court with Reynolds.ca and check out the pinned comment down below to find Reynolds.ca, their website, or in the description also down below. And thank you very much to Reynolds.ca for supporting our channel, Team Canada, and for you guys for finding the best rentals all across the country. And when it comes to rentals, this player might need a rental down in Bakersfield. When it comes to Matthew Savoie, there was a recent interview with the head coach of the Bakersfield Condors, Colin Chalk, on the Jason Greger show the other day, and he had this to say about Matthew Savoie. When he was there, he revealed what his plan would be for the young forward, and if he starts the year in the AHL. Chalk is eager to work with Savoie and figure out the best position for him to play. I'm really excited to get to work with him. I played mainly as the center position. You can relate to a young centerman, know the things and habits that a junior player would have, and some that can help you out as a pro. Of course, Colin Chalk just recently got himself a multi-year extension behind the bench of the Bakersfield Condors as he's led them to the playoffs in each and every one of his single seasons there. So congrats to him. But when it comes to, Chalk sort of helping out Savoie on the ice, it's also really great for him, just providing that expertise, helping Savoie develop into not only, a player of his own, but something that he can take into the future. All the tips and tricks that, other coaches, defensively minded coaches, wouldn't necessarily have in order for Savoie. And there's also another quote. Some of you are asking, well, he's pretty small, isn't he, to play the center position? But a lot of hockey minds believe that a player needs to have a certain amount of size to succeed playing the center position. And of course, that's not the case for every smaller center. Brayden Point of the Tampa Bay Lightning is one of the best centers in the league and is only 5'10". So let's get into the numbers there with comparing Point and Savoie. Of course, both players did play for the Moose Jaw Warriors in their final season of junior. And you can see there, when it comes to, before the draft and after they're drafted, similar numbers. Of course, you can see Brayden Point there with the star probabilities. Of course, they didn't exactly get that one correct in the slightest. But when it comes to Savoie's size, of course, he's 2 inches smaller than Point. But size, I'm not necessarily concerned about Matthew Savoie's size at all. He seemed to have used it in the WHL with the Moose Jaw Warriors. Sure, he's a smaller player, but smaller players have been known to go on to success. Guys like Brayden Point, like I just mentioned, Theo Fleury, multiple other smaller players can get away with it. Of course, the opposite side being a guy like Kyler Yamamoto, who is small himself, tried to play like he was a bigger player, but just ran into injury problems, like concussions of the sort. So it doesn't always necessarily work out in that case. Now, I'm excited for myself for Matthew Savoie. Just a small sample size here, not only from his time with the Wenatchee Wild, but also with his time with the Moose Jaw Warriors. Of course, a very small sample size, but you can see there the numbers speak for themselves when it comes to a player like Savoie. And of course, defense, not his strong suit, and as a center, he should be able to, sort of step into that defensive center role. Of course, he has a fantastic shot, but if you can sort of find out a two-way player, or a two-way build, two-way style, I think he will have a lot of success in the AHL, and hopefully we might see him with a 9-game trial up with the Edmonton Oilers, sort of burn off a year of that PTO. I wouldn't mind it at all, and seeing him step into a much bigger role. If it has to be bottom 6 with the Edmonton Oilers later on down the season, I don't mind it at all. Teams really do need the smallest amount of cap breaks when it comes to, if they have a guy like Draisaitl and McDavid taking up a good chunk of the cap, a guy like Matthew Savoie who plays above what his contract says, that'd be huge for the Oilers, not only with development, but allowing them to sort of build the team around something that would be stronger to their needs when it comes later down in the season. If it's a bottom pairing defenseman, if it's another winger to get them, that playoff push, that extra playoff expertise, all the power to him. And there might be, a new person behind the reins when it comes to who's running the show. And there's a bigger, extensive GM search for the Edmonton Oilers. And of course you're saying, well, Jeff Jackson is doing a phenomenal job. Why doesn't he just continue his role? And he doesn't want to do the job himself. One of the ways that a former player agent can make a great GM, of course, Jeff Jackson was Connor McDavid's former agent. They know the business side of the game like anyone else, and they understand the give and take of contract negotiations. You can see that sort of take effect on the Canada Day free agents frenzy. Jeff Jackson went down to business. He knew what his players wanted. They wanted to come back. Jeff Jackson knew they wanted to come back to finish the story that they had yet to finish in the Stanley Cup Final. And, that's why he needs to stop picking up the phone to interview GM candidates. He's found a very, very comfortable role with the Oilers. And although he's come out saying he doesn't want the job and has no intention of taking it on, he should strongly reconsider. So let's go through 3 candidates that I think have a strong opportunity of becoming the new Oilers GM. One of those is Mark Hunter. He's been linked to the Oilers GM more than any other candidate on this list. Of course, he was interviewed back in 2019, along with other guys like Ken Holland, who eventually got the job, and Bill Zito, who is now in Florida with the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. I would have loved to have Zito, but you take what you can get with Ken Holland. Sure, he built himself a team, but the reins needed to be passed on. And he once served as the assistant GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs along with Kyle Dubas, but has been occupied in his role as the owner and GM of the OHL's London Knights for the past several years, along with his brother Dale. And you can see there's a little bit of a London influence there with that first-round pick, Sam O'Reilly. Of course, the Oilers traded up to the first-round pick. Now that Sam O'Reilly, there were multiple, rumblings. Was Mark Hunter behind that pick, and along with William Nickel down in the 7th round there. So a little bit of conspiracy there, with Jackson and Sam O'Reilly. That might have been Mark Hunter whispering in Jackson's ear, "This kid's really good." But who's to say? And another candidate is Keith Gretzky, of course, the GM for the Bakersfield Condors. And if they decide to promote from within their organization an internal hire, Keith Gretzky might be the guy, the younger brother of obviously Wayne. He's been working as an assistant GM with the club since 2016, and he even had a stint as Edmonton's inner GM in 2019 after Peter Shirley was fired. Of course, Peter Shirley fired in January 2019, so that meant Keith had the job for a little over 4 months. And Gretzky continues to work as assistant general manager for the Oilers to this day, which means that Jackson has relied on him during the draft in the beginning of free agency, so pretty much Jeff Jackson's right-hand man. Of course, also GM for the Bakersfield Condors, and with them making the playoffs in each of the past 5 seasons. And further helping Keith Gretzky, he has lengthy experience at various levels of scouting prior to arriving in Edmonton, and of course he worked as the director of amateur scouting for both the then Arizona Coyotes and the Boston Bruins. Now, Keith Gretzky, if the Oilers want to go, with a guy who has known the team for, almost 10 years, 8 years, 2016, he's been there, throughout the turmoil in 2016 to now. The Oilers didn't exactly have a smooth road leading up to this point, but Keith Gretzky, he knows the ins and the outs of the general manager position with Edmonton. Daryl Katz loves his 80s Oilers connection more than anybody else. He can sort of tell with, the Paul Coffey hire, although that wasn't more so an 80s, 80s nostalgia hire. He's been phenomenal behind the bench for the Oilers, helping out the defense. But alas, finding with our last GM, sort of a dark horse and sort of my pick as who I'd like to become the Oilers general manager, Matthew Darche of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Ex-player turned executive Matthew Darche from the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's been the director of hockey operations for the Lightning since 2019 and also been a assistant GM with the team for the past 2 seasons. With the success in Tampa Bay, that makes him like the intriguing candidate to finally take that next step in Edmonton. And for me, that's the guy. That's the guy you need to go with. Fresh new blood. He's been phenomenal in Tampa Bay, of course. 2 cups back-to-back, made the Stanley Cup final in 2022, so 3 straight cup appearances. That's nothing to scoff at, especially in the salary cap era, where it's hard to do that, back-to-back. It hasn't been done a whole lot. I mean, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay. Darsh said Julian Brisebois, the GM of the Lightning, has involved him in basically every file and project he's working on, calling it a very accelerated learning curve. Darsh has worked on budgets and keeping track of the salary cap, been involved in trade deadline meetings and planning for the summer's NHL draft, amongst other things. I mean, he's been learning every step of the way with Julian Brisebois. I think he's ready to take the reins for, his own team, to take over the reins for a new team that needs fresh blood in the general manager spot. Just looking here with the Oilers general manager history, I mean, they do love their former players. Of course, Glenn Sather, bit of an outlier there. He was probably the best GM the Oilers have ever had, except for, Jeff Jackson's nearly month-long renaissance when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers and making the free agent moves and trades. But, I mean, Kevin Lowe, Steve Tambellini, Craig McTavish, Peter Chiarelli, of course, the interim, Keith Gretzky, and Ken Holland. I wouldn't exactly say that's fresh blood, except for Keith Gretzky, but, of course, there's the Wayne connection. But it's time for the Oilers to start new, sort of new era with the team. New GM, Matthew Darsh, my guy. Let me know down in the comments who the Oilers should take for the new general manager spot. Should they go, well-seasoned veteran with Mark Hunter? Should they go another name that I didn't mention? Or should they go with Matthew Darsh? Of course, Eric Tulsky was another one of my picks way before this even ever happened, but of course, snatched up by Carolina. But what can you do? Again, let me know down in the comments what you think, and have yourself a great day. I'm Matt.